Hey guys, welcome to Christina Cakes It. I'm Christina and today I'm going to be making a crochet blanket cake. So this is a very special episode. This is my Mother's Day episode and I am making this cake in honor of my mom. So last year I made her a deer themed cake because she is like the deer whisperer. And this year I decided to make a cake in honor of her because she loves to crochet. So my mom has been crocheting as long as I can remember, and she gives away these beautiful Afghans that she makes as gifts to like her loved ones. And she actually made me a blanket that I designed. I think I was 5 or 6 years old when she first started out, and I didn't know the word for it, but I was actually looking for a zigzag pattern. I actually still have the blanket today. So this blanket has gone with me everywhere. It went with me to college in San Diego. It's come with me to LA, and I love this blanket and I love my mom, and so I'm making this cake for her. And the last thing I want to mention before I get started is I am also wearing the apron that she made me, and I'm probably going to wear it every Mother's Day episode until she makes me another one. So to create this cake, there are a few steps. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating the yarn ball shape out of cake, and then I'm going to cover it with fondant to make it look like a skein of yarn like this. From there, I am going to create a pattern all along the sides of the cake to look like a crocheted blanket. Then I'm going to place the yarn on top of the cake and add some final touches. So to get started, you guys can see that I do have my frosted and crumb coated 6-inch 4-layer cake ready to go. So this has been chilled in the fridge and it's all prepped. And here in front of me, I actually have 1/4 of an 8-inch layer cake. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the round shape for the yarn. And this is exactly how we make cake pops. And this is going to be basically like a giant cake pop. So I have my cake and I am just going to mix this to crumble it. After I crumble my cake, I'm going to add a little bit of buttercream frosting. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. You definitely don't want to add too much to make it too moist. You want it just enough that it'll hold its shape when you form it. So this is like maybe 2 tablespoons. So after I have my frosting mixed in here, I am just going to make a ball shape with my hands. So I can see that I added just the right amount of frosting to this, because it's holding its shape and it's not too moist. So I just form a sphere. So next I'm gonna cover this with fondant so that I get a shape that looks like this. So for this, I am just using my homemade marshmallow fondant, and I just dyed it a baby blue to kind of go with the colors that I already have. I actually did try this a couple different ways, and originally I thought I was gonna cover this with buttercream frosting and just like pipe lines. And I made all this buttercream frosting and it actually didn't work at all and it looks terrible. So I went back to the fondant method, and I have seen people use like the fondant like extruder where it makes like the lines. I actually don't like using those. They hurt my hands a lot. So I am using a different technique. So I'm just gonna roll out my fondant. And I do want my lines to be pretty straight. So I'm just gonna cut off this excess here. So from here, I'm going to basically just cut a bunch of lines that look like the yarn, and I'm just eyeballing it to the thickness I want. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just going to place these over my sphere. And I can put the little excess underneath. You can also cut it if you want. So with your first layer, you actually don't need to completely cover the sides because we're gonna do another layer across. After the first layer, we're just gonna go across this way like the yarn is rolled up. yarn going like diagonal across this way. So I'm pretty happy with the shape of this, and what's nice is I can continue to actually mold it even a little bit more so that I want to make it a little bit rounder. So I'm going to go ahead and set all my yarn aside while I focus on my cake. So for this next part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe buttercream all along the sides to make it look like a crocheted blanket. And for this, I'm going to be using an Ateco Tip 800. So I am using a stiffer consistency buttercream, and I'm going to just do like an X pattern all along the sides of this cake. And the key here is you do want to go slow. So you guys can see that I did start a little practice section here. And what I'm going to want to do is I am going to score along the cake to make sure that the columns come out evenly. So I'm just using an offset spatula to measure the spacing. So I'm just going to do this all the way around my cake. So from here, I am just going to make the X pattern going down each of my columns. Alright, so the sides of my cake are done, and to give you guys some context, it took me about 45 minutes and I did have a serious hand cramp, but I made it through and it looks great. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to place all of my yarn on top of my cake. So I'm just going to place these based on where I think they look good, so I might play around with it a little bit. So after I place the yarn, I am going to cut a few more yarn strings just to kind of make these look a little bit more realistic. now that I have my yarn placed on the top of my cake, which by the way, I think turned out super cute, I am going to add a little bit of fringe along the bottom. Blankets usually have fringe, and this is also gonna hide any imperfections that my cake has. So I'm just using a very small round tip. I think this is a Wilton tip 5, and I'm just adding fringe. Alright, so my crochet cake is complete, and I do hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel.